Welcome back to my channel. Following on from my previous video surrounding the relative age effect, I will today be looking into the effect an athlete's birthplace can have on their performance, as well as their overall success within sport. This is because two variables that have been identified as indirectly influencing development and attainment are one's date of birth, which comes from Barnsley et al. In 1984, and their birthplace from Cote et al. In 1987. Before I dig deeper into some key examples, there is research out there which supports this theory, believing an athlete's place of birth can have an effect on their ability. For example, several studies have shown that the population size of a birthplace community influences the likelihood of achieving an elite status. As well as this, in 2017, Rossing et al. Found that birthplace also seems to influence both young athlete participation and their long-term adherence to the sport. Starting with the factor of population size in an athlete's birthplace, my main source of research here came from athletes in America and Canada. A main body of research I found came from Cote et al. In 2006, as they identified birthplace biases amongst US-born professionals in baseball, basketball and golf, as well as US and Canadian-born professional ice hockey players. Specifically, they found that players were more likely to originate from communities of less than 500,000, with the highest odds repeatedly identified for communities of 50,000 to 100,000 in size. As well as this, biases were apparent in research from Curtis and Birch in 1987, as when looking at Canadian ice hockey players, they discovered that players were more likely to originate from communities ranging between 1,000 and 5,000 people. Communities of less than 1,000 people were less likely to produce professional ice hockey players. The reason this size of city in North America is so prominent when creating talented athletes within the previously named sports could be down to the fact that the small to medium-sized communities may provide fertile ground for play, participation and competitive experience during the early years of participation, with less likelihood of imposing constraints. As well as this, in 1982, Bloom revealed from his well-known interview study that almost all Olympic swimmers were characterised by being very much at ease in water as early as age 3 to 4 years old. Bloom rationalised that close proximity to water, particularly in warmer climate, could function as a catalyst to an early stimulation to feeling at ease. Consequently, the swimmers could develop a special feel for the water at an early stage, which seemed crucial in the development of their swimming talent. This takes me nicely onto another great example of birthplace being a key factor which contributes towards athlete success. This example is Kenya and the dominance their athletes hold over long-distance running. To put this dominance into perspective, 17 men in history have ran a marathon faster than 2 hours and 10 minutes. In October 2011 alone, 32 men from Kalenjin in Kenya achieved this feat. In the same year, 258 Kenyans ran a sub-2 hour 15-minute marathon. In comparison, Britain had only one athlete achieve this, despite its population being nearly twice Kenya's size. And finally, only 5 American high schoolers have ever ran a sub-4-minute mile, while St. Patrick's High School in Kenya once had 4 sub-minute milers in one school year at one time. When looking at how and why this dominance has occurred, the characteristics of these athletes' birthplace play a huge part. Firstly, the annual income in Kenya is the equivalent of only $800. This therefore creates a study or run mindset, as many are encouraged to run in order to get away and go on to the bigger stage, where they will gain greater financial reward. As well as this, 81% of the 404 registered pro-Kenyan runners had to walk or run a considerable distance to and from primary school. Circumstances like these played a huge part in building up the grit and resilience it takes to push an athlete to the top, as right from their birth, these Kenyan runners had to fight for everything. Also, their training methods are unique, yet bring them success. For example, Martin Lell, who is a 3-time London Marathon winner and a 2-time New York Marathon winner, has never been inside a gym. And Lorna Kiplagat, a half-marathon world champion, has stated that during periods when I train the hardest, I spend 16 hours a day in bed. These cultural factors and training strategies are not the only reason for their success. As well as this, there are biological and physical factors surrounding Kenya and its athletes which propel them to succeed. These include many Kenyans being born with proportionally long legs and thin lower legs, which contribute to a good running economy. And also, the fact that Kenya is positioned 2,800 metres above sea level turns out to be a very useful factor for long-distance runners, as this climate increases the amount of red blood cells within their bloodstream, which in turn improves their VO2 max and their aerobic capacity. To conclude, when looking at the Kenyan example, or birthplace in general, there is never simply one overriding factor that makes a birthplace the key to athletic success. Instead, these places combine many different social, physical and cultural factors into a perfect blend to give the athlete the greatest chance of success right from the beginning of their life.